There is an uncomfortable truth that very few people are willing to face. Most people believe that disciplined individuals were simply born different. They assume these people possess extraordinary willpower. They imagine they wake up every morning full of motivation and effortlessly do what needs to be done. But science tells a completely different story. In reality, disciplined people feel tired. They feel fear. They feel the urge to quit. The difference is that they have learned something that most people never discover. They learned how their own minds work. And that is exactly why they are able to win a battle that takes place inside the human brain every single day. While millions of people remain trapped in the same cycle of broken promises, procrastination, and regret, a small group continues moving forward, even when no one is watching. But why? Are these people truly mentally stronger? Or have they simply discovered an invisible mechanism that most people never notice? The answer begins with a difficult truth. Mentally weak people do not fear discipline because it is difficult. They fear it because discipline destroys every excuse that has supported the identity they have built for years. Every disciplined person you meet becomes living proof that change is possible. And once someone proves that change is possible, excuses begin to lose their power. That is why determined people are often criticized. You're doing too much. You work too hard. You should enjoy life more. These statements rarely come from genuine concern. More often than not, they are driven by a psychological mechanism known as cognitive dissonance. When we see someone doing what we know we should be doing ourselves, an uncomfortable internal conflict appears. Our brain dislikes that conflict. So it tries to eliminate it. There are only two ways to do that. The first requires effort, change our own behavior. The second is much easier, convince ourselves that the other person is wrong. That is why so many people criticize those who wake up early, study on weekends, save money, exercise consistently, or spend years building something meaningful. Deep down, these people represent one uncomfortable question. If they can do it, why can't I? But this is only the surface of the problem. Because the real battle never happens between you and the world. It happens inside your own mind. Imagine your alarm goes off at 5 a.m. The night before, you promised yourself you would get up. You promised you would start a new routine. You promised that this time your life would finally change. Then the alarm rings. And suddenly, a voice appears. It's cold today. You deserve more sleep. Start tomorrow. It feels like that voice is you. But surprisingly, it isn't. Neuroscience shows that many of our decisions are influenced by automatic brain systems that evolved long before modern civilization existed. For hundreds of thousands of years, survival depended on conserving energy whenever possible. Every unnecessary movement meant fewer resources available for hunting, escaping predators, or surviving another day. Your brain learned one incredibly effective rule. Never waste energy unless absolutely necessary. That mechanism saved countless human lives. Today, however, it works against you. Your brain doesn't distinguish between running from a predator and working out at the gym. It doesn't distinguish between studying for 3 hours and wasting energy. To your brain, effort is still effort, and anything that demands effort automatically triggers resistance. This is why so many people mistake biological resistance for laziness or personality. In reality, they are often obeying an ancient survival system they have never learned to control. But there is another force that is even more powerful. One that influences almost every decision you make. Dopamine. You have probably heard people describe dopamine as the pleasure chemical. That explanation became popular. But it is incomplete. Dopamine does not exist to make you feel pleasure. It exists to make you pursue rewards. Imagine a hunter thousands of years ago discovering fresh animal tracks. At that moment, dopamine floods his brain. Not because he has already found food, but because food is now possible. Dopamine creates motivation. It pushes you toward action. For most of human history, this system worked perfectly. Until the modern world learned how to activate it without requiring effort. Today, all it takes is one swipe. One short video. Another notification. Another like. Another message. Another endless scroll. Each tiny stimulus provides a small reward. Without realizing it, your brain learns a dangerous lesson. Why work for months to achieve a distant reward when I can receive small rewards every few seconds? This is one of the greatest psychological challenges of modern society. Never before have humans had such easy access to instant gratification. And never before has discipline become so difficult to develop. Every time we choose immediate pleasure over meaningful effort, we strengthen the neural pathways that make the next good decision even harder. This is exactly how habits are formed. Unfortunately, bad habits are formed the same way. The brain learns through repetition. It does not care whether the behavior helps or hurts you. It only asks one question. What do you repeat most often? Whatever you repeat becomes easier. That is why driving feels overwhelming during your first lessons but eventually becomes automatic. That is why studying feels exhausting at first but later becomes natural. That is why disciplined people do not depend on motivation. They depend on repetition. A famous quote often attributed to Aristotle captures this idea perfectly. We are what we repeatedly do. Whether or not Aristotle said those exact words, the principle remains profoundly true. Your identity is not built by your intentions. It is built by your repeated actions. If you constantly promise yourself you will exercise but never do, your brain learns that your promises mean nothing. If you repeatedly delay studying, that behavior slowly becomes part of your identity. Self-confidence rarely disappears overnight. It erodes one broken promise at a time. Every promise you break sends a silent message to your brain. My word cannot be trusted. Now imagine the opposite. You set an incredibly small goal. Read 5 pages. Do 10 push-ups. Take a short walk. You complete it. The next day, you complete it again. Then again. It seems insignificant. But something extraordinary is happening inside your brain. Every small victory strengthens the connection between the person you believe you are and the person you are becoming. Neuroscience has a name for this process. Neuroplasticity. Your brain is constantly rewiring itself according to what you repeatedly do. In other words, you are literally reshaping your brain through your habits. That is why discipline has never been simply about willpower. It is brain training. And that completely changes how we view mentally strong people. They were not born different. They simply spent enough time teaching their brains to respond differently. While most people trained themselves to quit whenever discomfort appeared, they trained themselves to stay. And perhaps the most fascinating part of all is this. Your brain will always try to protect the identity you already have. Even when that identity is destroying your life. That is exactly why change feels so difficult.